Hi GAC, I'm Alex Jan from Novation. We're here today to take a look at the 61 SL Mark III. It's just about to be announced and we wanted to come down and just give you a very brief overview of kind of what it's all about. So without further ado, let's take a little bit of a deeper look. So fundamentally it's a MIDI controller, but it does have an 8-track sequencer built into it. So it's very easy to navigate around your 8 tracks by using these different selections to select the different track. It also has an arpeggiator built into it. It offers dual CV gate and modulation outputs. It also offers dual MIDI output or through on the second output, which can then be easily connected up to maybe some CV gate enabled equipment or for more traditional DIN capable MIDI devices. So for example, just to give you a very brief overview to see it working. We've got a Bass Station 2, which is obviously one of our products, and also a little circuit set up as well. And because of the way that it integrates seamlessly with Ableton, but it does also work with other DAWs, we've also got a feature called In Control, which we'll come to, which will let you kind of take control of your session within Ableton as well. So it really kind of quite happily sits in the middle of a setup, whether you be maybe just a hardware only user, or if actually you'd like to use just the DAW, or maybe a hybrid of the two. Because it will work in standalone mode, you don't necessarily have to use the computer, which again is quite a useful feature for those people wanting to kind of keep an out-of-the-box experience. Or some people might get inspired by jamming on some ideas and then taking it a little bit further with the DAW. So again, a really, really nice way for this to fit into many different users' setups. So to give you a bit of an overview now, we're going to go back out of In Control, and if we go into our sequencer mode here. So the sequencer is activated by using this shift and sequencer button. I can now turn the sequencer on and off. We then have a transport control here. Now anyone familiar with our circuit or circuit monostation workflow, we basically have a very similar way of writing patterns. So on your 8 different tracks, you're going to have 8 individual patterns. Now within those 8 patterns per track, you can then go into a step sequence edit as well. So all I've done there is hit the step sequencer, and now you can see the transport is going through. We of course can take more control of that. So things like pattern options, by hitting options here, we can change maybe the direction of the pattern. So we want it to go maybe backward or forward, or talking backward and forward, we could use a ping pong style mode. There's also a random feature there as well, which again with certain genres that's quite an interesting feature. You can change the rate of that as well, which is really useful. So at the moment we've got it as 1/16. So if I adjust that maybe to say a quarter, we then get a slower way of going through the individual steps. So again, quite cool for getting additional longer pieces or phrases together. So we'll go back to 16 just for the sake of keeping it super simple. We've got a zone section, which again is really, really useful for people wanting to be able to get very creative with their playing. Now I'm not a keys player, so apologies for my poor playing, but what is quite useful is the idea that we can take control of instruments, whether it be computer or hardware instruments, and then play that from the one key bed. It's got a really nice semi-weighted synth action key feel. So again, for people that are better players than myself, a lot of people have said they're very at home with the feel of that, which is great. Again, something that was quite useful for me as not a mains key player is if I use the scale mode. Now if I press shift and activate scales in the same way I use shift to activate sequencer and zones, now I can easily select certain instruments or tracks that I would like to use that with. So for example, if I turn off on the unit, I don't want the drums, for example, to be affected by the scale mode, then I can easily deactivate those there. But because I'm using maybe some other sounds on the computer, or I'll be using external instruments, which again it will work with any MIDI enabled device, you can easily then assign where you want that scale to affect. So for the sake of just doing something visual, just very quick to get going, we've got a root note, which we obviously can select, and then the type of scale. So we want it to be natural minor. Notice the LEDs, which really are clearly lit on the key bed, that will start to change as I move the different scales around, offering me all the different notes available within that scale. Obviously, because I deactivated the drum section here, because I don't want those to be adjusted, but notice if I turn on the scale there, we've suddenly got the notes available. At the end of the day, I've probably selected certain drums on there, so I don't want to go into any further detail to start changing the scale of that. So I deactivate it there. Just a very quick one while we're here. The other option under scale mode, which is very useful, is if you're playing, say, a part and you're not very confident that you're in the right key, for example, uses drums, we can actually then, snap mode will send me to the kind of the nearest note within that scale. Filter will basically, if I hit a note that isn't lit, it won't play. And if I go to display only, just basically it will show me that scale on there. Now, if you're using this setup in a keyboard rig or low lighting areas, then of course you'll be able to also change off that, decide to not have that scale represented. So again, it won't flash at you on stage basically. But again, because I'm not a very good player, I'll leave that on snap just to help me here. So now we're going back into the sequencer mode. So now I'm back into sequencer. Let's just come into this. So now I select, say, track 1. Let's lay down some drums on this. So for example, we're running this now in our Ableton session here. We've loaded the 606 core kit, great sounding sampled kit based in Ableton 10. So because in the same way that we can use the circuit sequencer, I'm going to quickly lay a beat out. So I select the drum sound at the key that I want to put onto my polyphonic step sequencer. So I'll just do a 4/4 rhythm just for the sake of getting some ideas down. Now, maybe I want to start using those different patterns to start building up a song structure. So if I go into my pattern mode now, I'm actually going to use the duplicate button, which we have here, to duplicate that part to a second pattern. So if I select my second pattern now, in the same way you do on circuit, just hit the pattern pad, sorry. I now go into that, and let's go back into my step mode. I might want to maybe add a snare drum on these notes. Now, because it's polyphonic, you can have up to 8 different hits on that as well. So again, loads there to play with if you want to actually start recording different drum sounds into each individual hit. And again, obviously when you're working with a melodic part, then you can do quite sophisticated chords. And again, now it's not just the way to step sequence, which I kind of like to work with. We can also record in. Now, as an example there, I missed out that note. I didn't record that last note. So I can easily, again, use the duplicate button, which is above the clear button here. Let's duplicate that to that position. And I can maybe duplicate it again to have a little roll at the end of that part. So if I now play that. It's a really nice way of working with that and getting a quick result. For example though, if I don't like that part that I've just done, I don't want to kind of maybe go into too much detail, but I can just hit clear and just clear that whole step out. So now if I press play, it's a much more just a regular beat there. Now, for example, just because the way it works, you don't have to clear every kind of mistake if you like. So if I select here, now if I hold the pad lights red and it shows me my selected drum hits that I've added here. So I can see that this is where my hi-hat was. I can just then remove that. So I'm not removing the whole step, I'm just removing that particular hit from that step. So really, really useful. So again, just to keep moving forward, if we now go into my second track here, which again is represented now on the patterns, it's color coordinated. So track 2 is yellow, well, my yellow section is here. So again, we can leave that running if we wish. So we've just got my drum track running there. Now, we select the circuit pattern. So again, now I've forced it into a different scale, which is useful. So if I want to maybe just, I don't know, add something off of circuit, I'm just going to record something in on that one. Actually, what I'll do is I'll select 2 different patterns, sorry, and then I can actually record a longer take because it will actually sequentially go through 1 through 2. So. So you can easily start layering into your ideas straight away there. Now, again, maybe we want to lay down a bass line. We can jump ahead. So we've selected the Bass Station 2 track, which is on 3. So again, something. So we can maybe start step sequencing into that. So again, I select my track and then I select the pattern for that. So I've selected the pattern here. And now if I go into steps again, I might do this one per step. So again, I might know my notes that I want to add. So I could keep it all in a similar kind of area. So now if I play that, without even hitting play, I've already step sequenced in each individual hit. Now, because it comes with templates built into it, one of the really cool features about this particular example is that we give you templates that come with our own products, of course, things like our flagship Peak, Base Station 2, Circuit, etc. It does also come with other templates for things like the TR8S, and also it's very, very easy to be able to load your own individual templates and create your own individual templates. We use our component software, which is running here just on a copy of Chrome, and here I can easily go into browser mode. I can load and create my own templates relatively easily. But if I go into, say for example, Novation, here we've got a factory SL MkIII pack. We've got 64 different templates which can be selected there. So again, and if you use those all up, you can always back those up via sysx dump as well. So really, really nice feature. But anyone sort of familiar with mapping things, it can sometimes be quite laborious. If I go into my template editor, we can easily name, let's call this synth. And we can then maybe start selecting the parameters. So for example, I know that I always want my filter there. I can then maybe edit that and create a new filter. So let's just call this filter on synth. And we know that the CC channel is whatever it may be in the back of the manual for that particular synth. Let's call it 44, why not? So the idea being that it's that easy to be able to save and create templates. I can save that now template to a pool and then put that actually onto my SL, or maybe I'm using another person's setup and I want to use my own templates, and I can do that. Or if a friend of mine's working with me on a similar project, we can easily share between the templates between us or other users. So really, really useful. That can be stored locally on your computer and put onto a different device, or alternatively, you could actually then put that onto, you can then store that actually onto to the unit or to a separate device. So let's come out of that now. So back we go to live, just to sort of see what's going on. So we've kind of got a little bit of an idea of a track formulating here. Now, what I was saying with regard to the templates, if I go back to my circuit, now that sound is quite an interesting, quite raw kind of sounding sound. So I've selected track 2. It's a bit more interesting now by getting a bit of movement on the filter. Now, I'm not going to record any automation on Ableton right here, right now. I can actually record automation directly onto the unit, which is a really, really powerful feature. It makes it really does set apart from many other things out there. So now, for example, if I want to record maybe a little filter sweep on that circuit hardware, without actually using the hardware, I can control it all from this one central point. So I hit record and play. So now, what I was doing there was when I don't know how easy it is to see, but when I hit record, the parameter that we're adjusting goes red. So it gives me visual feedback that I've done some automation there. So that will use up one of my 8 lanes, if you like, for that automation. Now, I'm not overly keen on that particular filter. So in the same way that we use clear to clear a step, we can also use that to clear automation. So if I press clear and then adjust the parameter encoder, which I want to remove, now it's blanked out, that's normal, and then when we come back, I've now deleted that automation. So let's redo it again. Maybe I'll keep it a little lower. Again, maybe adjust some chorus level on the synth. Things like LFO rate, all of this can be adjusted and recorded onto the unit. So a very, very useful way of working. And as I said, the same way with the base station, we've obviously custom made these maps internally at our company. But again, if you wanted to work with other companies' products, this is really easy to map and you can easily do it. It's the same thing on the bass. Let's maybe calm that and get a bit of movement on the filter on the base station. Say calm, it's gone completely into acid land, which sounds great. So we've just got a little bit of movement there. Again, super simple, just being able to get ideas down and record that automation on the unit. And again, because we've got our 5 screens here, which clearly give me feedback, really bright LED screens. We've got our encoders above that, which will take control of the parameter on these front 4 screens. But we also have different banks of templates here as well. So for example, if we're starting to get some ideas down, I could maybe mute those particular sequences. So again, we've got that really nice workflow of being able to sort of mute, solo the independent sequences on each track. So again, nicely laid out. And again, things like, you know, we've got different levels and faders, etc., that can be adjusted here as well. Again, all completely mappable via our components as well, which is great. So I'll quickly jump ahead. So now, for example, just for the sake of argument, we've also got zones. Now, this is one thing that I'd like to show. So again, this is quite cool. So for example, that's my Ableton project now on this section of the keyboard. That's actually the circuit drums here. So let's maybe record in, I don't know, a little bit of a snare or something on there, on this particular bit. So I'm using the zones. I'm not a keys player, so I won't embarrass myself. But what is quite neat that you can actually then start doing different drum sections, or whether it be a bass or lead or whatever it may be. So you've got up to 8 different zones there. So again, completely customizable, which is really, really cool. So next up, let's take a little look at laying down maybe another melodic sort of section. I think there was a pad that I loaded up, I think via the wavetable here. So again, scale's helping me play a note, sorry, a chord I should say. So in the same way, I can either record that in by going, but you know what, I might just spend a bit of time getting just the right chord. So if I maybe go and then select it, now if I press playback, it'll be a very short little gate on that. Now we can easily then go into our options and actually select the gate on that particular note, and then I can say to it, I'd like the gate to be 16 step long, or you know, 8 steps as an example. So I've now made that 8 steps. Now when it hits that first note, it will then play it for 8 steps on that 16 sequence. So that's quite a nice feature, being able to just jump in there and do that. But so yeah, just to give a real kind of quick example of that and how easy it is. So let's now jump ahead. I can start showing you the arpeggiator. So if I now turn that on in the same way we activated our sequencer, Shift and Arp turns it on. We've just got kind of, now of course, because it's an arpeggiator, we can change the way it works. So I can tell it that I want that part to be on part 8, or follow me around wherever I end up. Again, quite useful when you're writing ideas. But let's say we want to have it on to our part 8. So now we can then go into our type, so we can adjust it up and down or just up. And we can change the octave range as well. So for example, 3 octave range. Let's keep it around that 1. It kind of sounded a bit more kind of simple. So now, for example, we can also change the number of notes within that as well. So the sequencer now is yellow, and I can then easily select and deselect the notes that I want it to hit on. So again, totally independent of using the computer. It's all based on the hardware, which is really, really useful. And again, because we've locked the scale, my terrible playing will keep me in check of what I'm doing when I'm recording. So if I hit play now. So really easy to just get ideas down. I said it's just a very quick little jam, and just to really showcase kind of what it can do. So really, really neat feature. So again, that can be latched as well. So we can just press the latch button, and then I don't have to necessarily keep holding that key, letting me kind of get a little bit more creative and do something else within that. So that's basically an overview of the kind of external mode, which can be achieved. Again, obviously we're using it with Ableton purely as a sound source here. But now, as an example, let's take it a little bit further. So we'll go into the in control mode. So when I press the in control button, now effectively this is going to turn into our Ableton Live controller here. So we're easily able to do things like mutes, like you'd expect on one of our other key controllers that we offer. Also things like solo, again already pre-mapped, nothing really too taxing there for you to get going straight away. we've got different banks, so I can record arm as an example. So notice my grid now is like our Launchpad series, where if I select these now, I can actually record all of that into it. Now we've created a few ideas on the hardware. Maybe I want to use this functionality to, I don't know, record those ideas down into Ableton and then start taking it further within the software. So again, we can use the record mode. That will then start recording that into there. So if I hit play, again, stop, you know, all of my transport controls and things like that, that will all be pre-mapped as well. So Ableton will be able to be controlled from that. But again, now we can then do things like the playback. Now they've gone green where I've actually recorded things into there. So really nice way of working with it. So just to kind of showcase that again, let's just stop and go back to in control. And we go back to our sequencer. So even there, as I'm just showing you this, notice how all the drum hits that I recorded in for my patterns are there, all of my different synth parts, my chords, etc. Everything's then recorded in. Sorry, there wasn't anything on those ones, but even like the audio and everything's been taken care of. So because you want to be able to maybe launch or take control of your session, you can easily use this kind of launch section if you like. And then we can easily browse using the grid on the screen as well. So you can easily navigate around your project, which is really, really cool. And as well, one thing I will mention as well, when I'm in this in control mode, and this is a massive feature, is that when I select the individual tracks, we've then got stuff already pre-mapped out as well. So again, things that we felt that a lot of users would go to straight away. The way that this has, you know, been designed, a lot of those kind of features that you find you're always going toward, they're already there for you. It really is simple to work for, and again, that's using the Ableton's inbuilt, you know, great sounding effects, etc. But if you're using a third-party plugin or something like that, it's really easy to map that as well. And actually, the way that the script's been designed, when you're mapping that nice and easily within Ableton, you click in the order of things that you want. That will then give you those actually that order on screen as well. So again, for me, it's one of the easiest MIDI controllers to be able to create your own ideas with and your own workflows. In the same way that we navigated around, we can also navigate our session, not just up and down, kind of around our session. We can also browse by track as well. So again, at the moment, we're just using 1 through 8, but you know, if you start getting into using, I don't know, 28 plus channels, you can easily then scroll through your sessions, which is really, really useful. Again, we're doing quite a you know, hardware and software intensive session, but I'm not looking at the computer constantly. A lot of this is keeping me focused on my centerpiece. So this could be, I said, a centerpiece to an external hardware setup, could be at home in a DAW setup. You know, as I said, it really will find lots of different ways to be used, and there's no right or wrong with it, so just have a lot of fun with it. As I said regarding the map, things like our faders and everything are already mapped here as well, so really, really nice way of working. You can obviously record using the automation in the same way you would on a DAW, but also because we've got our external MIDI control as well, because we have dedicated track sequencers, we can also easily assign the CC message here. So actually my inbuilt sequencer can even control certain parameters. So again, if it's been used in a live setup or in a keyboard rig, really, really useful feature. So whether it be production or performance, it really has got you covered. We've got an external clock out. So again, that, you know, again, showcasing it can easily hook up to other pieces of kit. And assigning the CV gate is really simple, but we probably haven't got time to go through it all now. But as I said, really, really is a great unit. What I'd say is, for more information and for pricing and availability from GAC, check the link beneath the video, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you.